Hey everyone, I'm Jack, and today I'll be continuing our Remastered Arkham series boss ranking with a re-ranking of the bosses of Batman Arkham City from worst to best. As many like to point out, each Arkham game has one or two undeniable strengths above any of the others, those typically being Asylum's atmosphere, Origins' as bosses, Knight's graphics and combat, and City's narrative. Arkham City, written by Paul Dini, features one of the greatest Batman stories in the modern era of DC, an era I consider began with Batman 1989, an expositional analysis of Batman's character flaws and incessant desire to have a Joker-type figure in his life, by nature sacrificing many lives and losing sight of his greater goal for the sake of personal victory. While, as I said, Origins firmly holds the Best Boss award, City's showing isn't half bad and features a far broader spectrum of core Batman villains than Asylum, and a noticeable increase in quality resulting from more polished Predator and combat systems, and a better understanding of the applications of Batman's combat mechanics alongside new weapons, abilities, and gadgets. Lastly, I will not be counting the Riddler this time around, as it's not really a boss, and I also could not be fucked to gather 470 odd trophies, riddles, and scannable question marks for like the 5th time. Sorry. As well, this ranking is based on normal difficulty, unlike hard like I claimed I'd do in the previous remastered ranking, as I forgot that hard practically breaks City in Origins and makes the combat utterly miserable. Anyways, and wait for this hot take, I thoroughly enjoyed playing through Arkham City and am grateful to get to rank these bosses for the second time. With all that said, let's get into it. Harley Quinn and Two-Face, one and the same, being last is likely a shocker to most, but shouldn't be. I'll save opinions on Deadshot for when the time comes, which unsurprisingly is very soon. However, what Deadshot is disappointing, half-baked, and poorly structured, Harley Quinn/Two-Face is just unenjoyable. As I flaunt fairly often in Arkham videos, I am quite experienced and have an absolute understanding of each entry's gameplay entirely, so while I didn't necessarily have fun with Two-Face, I didn't struggle either. One thing I do like about Two-Face specifically, however, is how buggy the last chapter of Catwoman's 4-part story is. I had enemies floating in the air, knocking out the ground, and completely unrendered buildings. Buy it. Buy this shit. That said, I am in the slim minority of those who fought these two a combined 10 plus times, and even then I still find myself dying repeatedly to godlike observational skills on Harley and Harvey's behalf, as well as infinitely respawning enemies that make Predator impractical in a Predator boss fight. While it would break the fight if there were only a certain finite number of thugs, seeing as you can simply knock the boss out 4 times in a row in combat and win, having there be 2 to 3 constantly, with Two-Face and Harley usually calling them over to where they are for protection, makes it a waterboarding level of agonizing waiting game with no clear route to victory aside from going tits out and trying to finish them off before your measly ballistic armor v2.0 wears off from endless gunfire. It also doesn't help that Harley and Two-Face both come equipped with rocket launchers, meaning should they spot you and you climb up to a vantage point, they will promptly destroy every single one in the arena, essentially neutering you. While not the worst boss in this series, and there's a clear winner for me in that category, Harley Quinn/Two-Face aren't too far off and are naturally horrible bosses with counterintuitive design, likely resulting from both being DLC add-ons. And here we are. Deadshot is a really kick-ass villain in basically anything he's in. Fans of his should watch Assault on Arkham. He's fantastic in it. However, time really stuffed him down the gutter. There's just very little logic to saying this fucking dude is the same guy from Arkham Origins and Assault on Arkham, practically 2 different people. The fight's only mechanic is Predator through timing. Should Deadshot spot you, he'll kill you with 1 bullet, but there's enough time for you to wank one out, do a proper cleanup job, and still get under the grate to knock him out. For those of you who haven't played this game, you're likely wondering what the issue is, besides the fact that he's sort of a throwaway and in turn a slight example of character assassination. Simply, he's the final act of one of Arkham's best side missions, a very integral part of each game, and is unrewarding as a send-off to tracking down a string of political assassinations through minute clues and unique detective work that, for me, took over 4 hours to do as I waited and waited and waited for him to kill his 2nd and 3rd victims, which didn't help his case at all. Deadshot is extremely overhated, and I stand by that point, but still has very little going for him beyond the satisfaction of knocking out a super soldier. With Deadshot and now Mad Hatter, it's starting to seem more like I didn't count Riddler out of my own benefit over me deeming him not a boss. That's not true. Nonetheless, this was one of the weirder inclusions in the game. Mad Hatter in general is such an odd character that realistically wouldn't work, but does? He first shows up after you save Vicky Vale from the Joker's hijacking of her newscopter. Once you take her over to near Maxie Zeus's club, a wide angle of the surrounding area follows with a slight bit of Mad Hatter's top hat sliding in and out of the frame. A new side mission detailing the arrival of a gadget upgrade from Alfred promptly pops up, and once you get there, a gaseous cloud of, Hatter gas sprays out from the canister and you enter his parlor. While there's not much in the way of creative combat, cinematically this is the best boss in the game. The tea room entirely, as well as the clock and background in the fight itself, are two of the top 5 best visuals in the game and provide much necessary atmosphere to this encounter. The fight is nothing more than a combat challenge made easier by being able to knock thugs off of the clock, as well as thugs being one-shotted with high combo critical hits. Mad Hatter is actually potent should you let him charge up for 15 seconds, which is interesting, although with free flow focus and critical strikes, this should be nothing more than a passive combat rodeo. Mr. Hammer and Mr. Sickle are rare examples of gimmick bosses that have no gimmick to them whatsoever. The game attempts to fool you by telling you to quickfire the remote electric gun, but honestly you can just knock out Mr. Hammer and Mr. Sickle through basic spam and dodging, something I found to be a requirement when fighting them in combat challenges to get the highest grade. The remote electric gun causes them to spin cycle randomly, usually leading to enemies getting knocked out at the cost of yourself getting hurt as well. With 3 separate appearances and great design, the Abramovici twins are fun additions to Arkham City that add depth to its boss catalog. Titans return, very briefly, but are much better with Ultra Stun, a mechanic that makes you invincible while in motion and makes for much more polished Titan combat. Titan riding is also back, but way more advanced, controllable, and simply better. I also like how the Penguin, Joker, and Harley each had their own spin on their respective Titans aesthetics, however, be it from their lack of imposing challenge as compared to those of Arkham Asylum, or a more manageable approach to them through Ultra Stun, Titans don't have nearly as large of a lasting impact as they did previously, although they also weren't the forefront of the game's story. The Joker in quotes, because it isn't the Joker but Clayface, spoiler, as shown by his non-existent skeleton when you activate detective mode. If you've played this game's higher level combat challenges, this is that. A broad mixture of Titans, stun batons, shield and knife thugs alike, Mr. Hammer even, and of course, Joker. The main reasons I hold this fight in high regard, aside from its engaging combat through massive enemy variety, is arena design with the train and story implications. This is the big reveal of Joker's supposed recovery and Talia's eventual dupe of Batman, and all of those factors together make for a decently fun boss fight. 2 years later, and I still absolutely despise Kevin Conroy's irredeemable pronunciation of Ra's al Ghul, Ra's al Ghul, what the fuck, man. What about Liam Neeson, bro? However, what both takes of Ra's and not Ra's do have in common is swordplay to their respective maximums. This is a far less grounded version of Ra's, a more supernatural variant of the character that I personally find more intriguing as well. In this game, Ra's and Batman's relationship is similar to that of Palpatine and Vader throughout the Star Wars saga. He attempts to manipulate Batman into killing him by seducing his desire for being Gotham's sole savior through Lazarus, of which he himself grew addicted to and lived hundreds and hundreds of years with. This all culminates in a mind-bending demon trial sequence in which Batman earns his rightful place as the heir to Raz's throne with Talia as his regal partner, but not before killing the man. Among all of these bosses, there's an underlying theme of seemingly impractical gadgets being used as the main mechanic of this encounter. In this case, the quick-fire remote electric gun is your only way to victory and plays into timing by way of avoiding Raz's various attacks and shooting between his terracotta soldiers. Every few hits, the cycle resets with a quick action sequence finishing with a quick time, and the following Sandman bits get increasingly harder as they come. Through uniqueness rarely found in modern gaming alone, this fight deserves massive credit, but its constant rise in action makes for one of the better bosses in the Arkham series at that. Somewhere previously, I mentioned that I don't like unkillable characters because I find them anticlimactic and believe they exist for the sake of making a one-off story, and while both of those are true with Solomon Grundy in the majority of his appearances, including this one, he was never advertised to be a key component of the exposition, and wasn't, so be it. That said, when you're the one fighting an impenetrable monster, there's an incomparable feeling of satisfaction upon victory, one captured through Grundy's incredible designs, score, and atmosphere. He was hinted at early in the game during your first trip to the subway, shown here.
How did Penguin get it?
I don't know, but I'm sure it is. It's even got a name.
Solomon Grundy? Stupidest name I ever heard.
That's the thing you can hear in the museum. You know, Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday.
You may be right.
And is finally revealed during the climax of Penguin's portion of the story as his be-all, end-all. If only a power scaling feat showing off Batman's immeasurable IQ, you still find a way to defeat an unkillable force of the supernatural through destroying his 100-year-old electricity grates the Penguin uses in a proper case of animal abuse. It's pretty amazing how well humanized Grundy was in this game. This plays into the grimy atmosphere of an untouched cellar designed decades in the past, serving as reason for the electricity grate maggots that spawn in throughout, as well as the actual grates themselves. To destroy them, you make use of quick-fire explosive gel for each one, and promptly beat Grundy down 3 times over, each time continually breaking further into his body while Penguin counteracts Batman by increasing the voltage of the grates themselves. Grundy has a ball and chain on each arm that he uses in multiple different attacks depending on how far away you are from him, that aren't too hard to dodge necessarily, more awkward resulting from the dodge system itself. With each passing phase, he gets stronger and stronger, with the ball and chains leaving scorching trails that damage you on touch for multiple seconds after each attack, and a faster fire rate with the grates as well, making the timing naturally more difficult. And the last phase is by far the most intense of any in the game. Grundy latches himself onto the power generator out of desperation, and while stationary during it, he is constantly firing off swing after swing with AoEs following each attack, all while the grates are even faster and the maggots come in larger numbers to top. Batman doesn't kill, and I believe this is still true in this game, although it does very much push that boundary. You rip out Grundy's heart to finish him off, but Penguin still has his own final stand for you to beat. As expected, it's more of a passive dodging challenge over a legitimate phase of a boss fight, with you having to run up to him while avoiding missiles and beat him up once to finish. Solomon Grundy was surprisingly interactive, and a year since my first Arkham City ranking moved up a spot from it. The cornerstone of Arkham City's exposition returns to his second place spot, a case of extreme quality only beaten out by absolute perfection. After his slight cameo in the back end of Asylum, Bastille Carlo's teased canonical existence seemed to be, well, just that, up until the story's final moments where it's revealed the Joker hadn't yet taken Mr. Freeze's cure, rather hired Clayface to portray him to force Batman into a choice of life or death between Talia and himself. The fight begins with Batman's realization that he trapped himself in the fake Joker gag twice, one representing the death of the Joker and the other his fake livelihood. Clayface, due to his innate abilities, has a wide array of differing attacks, such as a hammer, rolling ball, and dung fling, the latter one of the game's more frustrating boss moves, overall a moveset you'd expect of a man made of clay, creative design at its finest. The main gimmick is damaging Clayface through Freeze Blast, as well when he enters his ball state you can bait him into rolling into the dynamite laid around each corner of the arena, dealing massive damage. You go through this cycle twice with much more aggression in the second phase, before slicing him up with Raz's sword and getting promptly blown the fuck out by cloaked IEDs per the real, sickly Joker. Now, this entire fight begs the question, how can Clayface even fucking die? Can he? Does he age? Will it be natural causes? Lord knows. I've never seen a man frozen, then cut up into dozens of bits, blown up by a crossword puzzle of explosives, then fried alive in water by a Tesla, and walk out like nothing happened. Well, I guess he actually never came back, but then Batman would have killed him, so what the hell. Sadly, the last phase, while similar to Grundy in that he becomes a stationary level hazard, is nothing close quality-wise. The arena becomes chock full of clay goons like the sand people from Raz's fight but reskinned and fought with a sword, and you can only damage Clayface by throwing a freeze blast into his mouth when he sporadically props it open. As well, he spurts out clay balls that deal hefty damage at a decently rapid pace, overall making this phase a nuisance and a measly closer to one of the Arkham series' greatest highlights. If not for the misery of the final phase, this would have been the #1 boss, blasphemous as it sounds, but years on and Mr. Freeze remains uncontested as the best boss in Arkham City. To the surprise of hopefully no one, Victor Fries returns as the best boss in the entirety of Arkham, for now and likely forever. While a logical idea in theory, it's extremely rare for a developer to truly perfect a game mechanic through a boss fight. Generally, bosses work within the confines of the game's combat, and in non-Nintendo/non-gimmick examples have one clear strategy, or rarely a few, that work to counter that boss's mechanics, thus making it a less overwhelming experience. This is mainly applicable to combat bosses. In contrast, stealth bosses are an entirely separate field, one of muck and shit, due to stealth being an antonym of combat, the literal avoidance of doing so. Arkham's take on stealth gameplay, Predator combat, is an anomaly, however, stealth built around defeating enemies by use of darkness, strategy, and silence. What I mean to say in an overall summary sort of way is that it's uncommon for a boss to evolutionize a game's mechanics as Mr. Freeze does, as typically bosses are just one-trick ponies with no expansion on gameplay beyond basic dodging and attacking. While very well balanced and unique in Asylum, Arkham City and its broader spectrum of gadgets and new takedowns, a grand total of 15, revolutionized stealth gameplay as a whole, with Mr. Freeze serving as the example of how to apply stealth to a boss fight. The fight starts sort of abruptly and with no real context. Moments earlier, Batman and Freeze were allies, with Batman even offering free assistance in finding Nora. The next, Mr. Freeze is popping shots at Batman over losing his pride from being told what to do. The more you get ordered, the less your balls sag, I guess. And finally, we begin. While not available on normal, there is a chart listing each of the 15 possible takedowns you can do on Freeze, and the mechanical creativity through arena design is unparalleled among any boss from any game. After each takedown, Freeze removes that takedown's activator in each corner of the arena, i.e. freezing the grates, power generators, or electric pool when hit by them. He uses heat signatures left by Batman's footsteps to track you, allowing you to bait him into certain knockdowns, and should he lose track if you jump off a ledge or something, he has trackers that are breakable with batarangs that home in on you no matter where you are if you don't get rid of them in time. Through incomparable intensity made in the dwindling availability of takedowns, forcing you to attempt some you've never even known existed and others you avoided out of difficulty, Mr. Freeze is not only the best boss in Arkham, but one of the best all-time in gaming history. He alone makes playing through this game worthwhile, and his tragic story of moral bankruptcy through blind affection is perfectly captured in his legendary Last Stand. Thank you so much for watching, and be on the lookout for my remastered Arkham Origins ranking very soon. Alex and I are both moving to college shortly, so expect a bit of a quiet period from us. That said, we will still be making videos, just transitioning to college life first. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't, and otherwise watch for new uploads every Wednesday. That's all for now. Deuces.